It was a quiet Thursday morning when the email arrived. A notification popped up on my phone, the subject line reading, "We need to talk, Dad." It's about the company. The word "Dad" hit me like a punch to the stomach. Emily had never once referred to me as Dad. She had always addressed me formally, with either Mr. Green or simply you. My mind raced as I stared at the email. Emily, my stepdaughter, the one I had never been able to connect with, was asking me to talk about the company? That was strange enough. But the tone of the email, so urgent, so serious, left me unsettled. It wasn't like her at all. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the exhaustion that had been creeping up on me for weeks. The weight of running a multi-million-dollar company was no small feat, especially since the sudden death of my wife, Clara, nearly 2 years ago. The company was my legacy, my life's work. I had spent decades building it from the ground up. And now, it seemed like Emily, my late wife's daughter from her first marriage, was trying to make a move on it. But why? I hadn't seen Emily much since Clara passed. She had been living in California, working in some tech firm in Silicon Valley. We didn't have the closest relationship, never did. She wasn't particularly warm, and I wasn't exactly a doting stepfather. I tried to offer her guidance, but she always brushed me off. She seemed to think I was some distant, irrelevant figure in her life. So why now? What had changed? I glanced at the clock. 10:15 a.m. I had a meeting in an hour with my senior management team, but something told me I had to address this before anything else. I called Clara's old office and asked for Emily. "She's in her office, Mr. Green," Clara's assistant said. "Shall I put you through?" "Yes," I replied, my voice more terse than I intended. "Put me through." Moments later, Emily's voice came through the phone. "Hey, Mr. Green. What's up?" There it was again, Mr. Green. I was still just the old guy in her life, the man who was married to her mother. We'd never been close, but after Clara's passing, I'd hoped she might open up a little, if only for the sake of family. I suppose I was fooling myself. "Emily," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "I got your email." "What's going on?" "What do you mean, it's about the company?" There was a brief silence on the other end, and I could almost hear her pacing. "Well, Mr. Green, I've been thinking. The company, it's not doing as well as it could be, and, well, you've been under a lot of stress. I think it might be time for a change. It's time to move forward. It's time to sell." My mind went blank. Sell? My company? The one I had spent every waking hour building? The company that was now worth close to $30 million? I leaned back in my chair, gripping the edge of the desk. Sell? You want to sell my company? I could feel the anger rising in my chest. How could you even think about selling something I built? It's not just a business, Emily. It's my legacy. It's everything I've worked for. It's my life's work. "I know," she said, her voice softer now, almost patronizing. "But you're getting older. You're slowing down. You've been distracted lately. And frankly, you don't need the stress. I'm just trying to help you." "Help me?" I echoed, my heart pounding in my chest. "You want to help me by selling everything I've built?" "Well, I've already found a buyer," she continued. "We've been in talks, and they're ready to make an offer. You'll get a good payout. Think about it, you'll have more money than you know what to do with. You can retire, relax, and enjoy life. Isn't that what you wanted?" I felt a rush of blood to my head. My mind spun. How had this happened? How could Emily, of all people, think she had the right to make decisions for me, for my business? "I don't want to sell," I said through gritted teeth. "I don't need your help. I'm not some old man who can't take care of himself." "Dad," she said in an exasperated tone, "you're not getting it. You're not a young man anymore. The company is worth millions. Do you really want to be tied down with all the stress, the late nights? It's time to move on. Her words hit me like a slap. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily didn't care about the company. She didn't care about the sacrifices I'd made, the sleepless nights, the countless hours I'd spent building it. She saw it as an opportunity, a way to cash out and move on. I don't want to sell, I repeated, my voice firm. I've worked too hard for this. This is my company. And I'm not handing it over to you or anyone else. There was a pause, and for the first time, I heard a hint of something in her voice, something that wasn't just business. I'm just trying to do what's best for you. You can't keep running the company forever. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I couldn't let my emotions take over, not yet. But I couldn't let this slide, either. This wasn't just a business deal, it was a betrayal. Emily, I said, my voice colder now, I built this company with my own hands. It's not something I'm going to give away just because you think it's time to sell. I'll give you time to think about it, she said, sounding almost smug. But don't take too long. The buyer is waiting, and they're ready to move forward. The call ended, and I sat there in stunned silence. My heart pounded in my chest as the weight of what had just happened settled in. My own stepdaughter wanted to sell the company I had spent my life building. She was willing to tear apart everything I had worked for, all for her own gain. I looked out the window, trying to collect my thoughts. I had to stop her. But how? The next few days felt like a blur. I tried to focus on the business, but every time I looked at my computer screen, all I could see was Emily's face, her cold, calculating eyes staring back at me. She wanted to sell my company. My legacy. The thought gnawed at me, growing more and more unbearable with each passing minute. I had to know everything, who she had been talking to, who was involved, and why she was so eager to hand everything over to a buyer. This wasn't just about money. It was something more. I spent the next several days digging into the company's records, going through old contracts and financial statements. At first, it felt like I was looking for a needle in a haystack, an innocent misunderstanding or some small discrepancy. But then, something caught my eye. A few years ago, I had agreed to let Emily take on a larger role in the company, mostly as a form of goodwill to try and build some kind of relationship with her. She had shown some interest in management, though her expertise was limited to marketing, and I had always thought of it as more of a way to make her feel involved. What I didn't realize was that she had been slowly inserting herself into more crucial areas of the business, gaining control over parts of it that I had always kept tight reins on. She'd been getting closer to key players, making decisions under the radar, and I had been too distracted to notice. It didn't take long before I found something even more troubling, an unsigned letter buried in the back of a drawer in my office. The letter was from a private equity firm, one of the most reputable in the country, offering to buy the company for a substantial sum. The offer wasn't exactly surprising, companies like mine often attracted such interest, but the timing of it was. The letter was dated months before Emily even brought up the idea of selling. She had been in talks with this firm long before I had any idea of what was going on. I felt the air leave my lungs as I stared at the letter. This wasn't just a matter of selling the company, Emily had already been negotiating in secret. And all this time, she had been pretending to care about my well-being, about helping me retire. But all along, she had been planning to take everything from me. I clenched my fists, my mind racing. What else had she been hiding? What other secrets was she keeping from me? I decided to dig deeper. I reached out to a few old contacts in the business world, people I had worked with for years, people I trusted. I asked them if they knew anything about Emily's involvement with this firm. One of them, a former colleague who had once been on the board of directors, didn't hesitate to speak up. Emily, he said, his voice cautious. She's been meeting with them for months. She's been pushing for this for a long time, but I didn't know she was going to take it this far. Why didn't anyone tell me? I demanded. Why didn't you tell me what was going on? He sighed. We thought she was just trying to get more involved, maybe even learn the ropes. But I guess she had a different agenda. She's been very convincing, very persuasive. She told everyone you were struggling, that you couldn't keep up with the company's demands. I could feel the blood rushing to my face. I had spent years building this company, pouring my heart and soul into it, and now Emily was turning everyone against me. She had managed to get inside the business, inside my life, and had orchestrated this entire thing without me even realizing. I sat back in my chair, my mind reeling. The more I uncovered, the worse it seemed. Emily wasn't just trying to sell the company, she was plotting to take it from me. She was positioning herself as the new leader, the one who would be in control once I was out of the picture. And she had been doing it for months, even before Clara had passed. My blood ran cold. I couldn't let this happen. But the more I dug, the more it seemed like I was powerless to stop her. She had already positioned herself so well, gaining allies among the board members, gaining control of key parts of the business. She had been careful, methodical, and now I was left trying to play catch-up. But I wasn't going to give up that easily. I wasn't going to let Emily steal everything from me, not after all I had built. I knew I had to act quickly, but I also knew that I couldn't do it alone. I needed help, someone I could trust, someone who knew how to navigate the mess Emily had created. I contacted Greg, my old friend and former attorney. He had been with me for years, helping me with legal matters, contracts, and business decisions. He had seen me through some tough times, and I trusted him with my life. Greg answered the phone on the second ring. "David, what's going on? You sound like you've seen a ghost." "I have," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "Emily's trying to sell the company." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "What?" Greg finally asked, his voice low. "She's what?" "She's been in talks with a private equity firm for months," I said, my words tumbling out in a rush. "She's been undermining me, taking control of the company behind my back. She wants to sell everything, to cash out, and I don't know how to stop her." Greg was silent for a moment, and then I heard him sigh. I knew something was off with her. I always thought she had her eye on the company, but I didn't know it had gotten this far. "You're going to need more than just legal help, David. You need to expose this before it's too late." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to do next. "I don't care how long it takes, Greg. I'm not going down without a fight." Greg's words echoed in my mind for days. "You need to expose this before it's too late." But how? Emily had been so careful, so methodical in everything she'd done. She had her hands in everything, contacts, agreements, negotiations, and I was just starting to catch up. I needed more than just a few emails or a letter from a private equity firm. I needed something solid, something undeniable. I spent the next few days poring over every document in the company's files. At first, it felt like I was looking for a needle in a haystack, but then, as I went through the stacks of paperwork in my office, I came across something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a series of emails, sent from Emily's account, and they were addressed to the same private equity firm I had found in that letter. The emails were long, filled with legal jargon and financial talk. But one thing stood out: Emily was negotiating a deal to sell the company in stages. She had been planning this for months, carefully orchestrating the takeover, all while pretending to be the dutiful stepdaughter, the concerned family member. The first email I read was dated just 2 weeks after Clara had passed. Emily had already begun discussing terms, listing the assets she planned to sell, the parts of the business that she thought would be easier to liquidate. She spoke of streamlining operations and consolidating the company's financial structure, but it was all code for one thing: she was planning to strip the business of everything that made it valuable. I felt a surge of rage as I read through each message. The audacity, the coldness, it was as if Emily had already written me out of the picture. She had made her decision. I was just the last obstacle in her way. But what made my blood run cold wasn't just the fact that she was trying to sell my company, it was that she had already lined up potential buyers, and the sale was nearly final. The only thing left was her final push to convince me that it was for the best. I closed the laptop with a snap, my mind racing. Emily had been so careful, so methodical, hiding everything behind layers of deceit. But now I had the evidence, clear and undeniable proof that she had been planning this for months. I couldn't just sit on it. I needed to act. I called Greg again. I found something, I said, my voice tight with urgency. I've got the proof. She's been negotiating with the buyers, setting up the sale, and she's even planning to sell parts of the company in stages. Jesus, Greg muttered. David, this is worse than I thought. If she's already got buyers lined up, it might be too late to stop it. But you're right, this is undeniable. You've got a case, David. We can't let her get away with this. I nodded, my mind already working through the possibilities. I know. I can't let her just take everything. But I need to figure out how to expose this without tipping her off. Greg was silent for a moment. What if you go public with it? You've got the proof now. If the other shareholders know what's going on, maybe we can put a stop to it before it's too late. The idea of going public was a tempting one, but it also carried enormous risks. Emily was already well entrenched within the company. She had supporters, people who had been swayed by her promises of a more modern, profitable future. If I exposed her now, it would be a battle for control. And if I lost, I wouldn't just lose my company, I'd lose everything. I need more than just the emails, I said. I need to find out exactly who else is involved. Who else has she been talking to? Greg's voice grew more serious. If you want to know the full story, you're going to have to dig deeper. You've got a couple of options: you can keep digging through the records, or you can try to get someone on the inside who can give you more information. But David, be careful. The deeper you go, the messier it gets. I knew he was right. But I didn't have a choice. Emily had already taken control of the company behind my back. The longer I waited, the harder it would be to undo the damage. I decided to take Greg's advice and reach out to someone on the inside. There was one person who might know more, someone who had worked closely with Emily and had been around long enough to see the shifts in power. Clara's old business partner, Mark, was a senior executive at the company. He had been with the business from the start, and although he had always been a quiet, reserved type, I knew he had to know something. I called him the next morning, hoping he would be willing to talk. Mark, it's David, I said when he picked up. I need your help. There was a pause before he responded. David, what's going on? You don't usually call me unless it's something important. I know, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about Emily. I know she's been in talks to sell the company, and I need to know what's really going on. I need you to tell me what you've heard. There was a long silence on the other end, and I could feel my heart racing. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice low. I've heard the same things. I've heard she's got some buyers lined up, and I've heard that she's been planning this for a while now. But David, you have to understand, Emily's not the only one involved. There are others who want the same thing. They've been feeding her information, and they're all after the same thing: control of the company. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just Emily. She wasn't acting alone. There were others involved, people from within the company, people who had their own interests in seeing me pushed out. I need more information, Mark, I said, my voice urgent. If you know who's been working with her, I need to know. He hesitated for a moment before responding. There's a meeting next week, Emily's holding it. She's going to present her plan to the board. If you want to stop this, David, that's the moment to do it. You've got one shot. Use it wisely. The weight of his words hung in the air. Emily was about to make her final push, and I had one chance to stop her. Her plan, and the company I had built. I had the evidence now, everything I needed to expose her and stop her from destroying my legacy. But with each passing hour, the pressure mounted. The meeting was scheduled for Monday, and I knew that if I didn't act soon, it might be too late. I spent the weekend gathering everything: emails, contracts, records, even the letter from the private equity firm. The evidence was airtight, and if the board saw it, Emily's scheme would be exposed. But there was a problem: Emily had a lot of influence within the company. She wasn't just my stepdaughter anymore, she had gained the trust of key board members and senior executives. The longer I waited, the more power she accumulated. I needed to act fast. Sunday night, I met with Greg at his office. We sat across from each other, the weight of the situation settling between us. "We have one shot at this, David," Greg said, his voice steady but grave. "If you expose this in the meeting, it's going to cause a storm. But it's the only way to stop her." "I know," I replied, rubbing my hands over my face. "But I don't just want to expose her. I want to make sure I get my company back, Greg. I want to put the power back in my hands." Greg nodded, pulling out a folder from his desk. "I've been thinking about this. You need to show the board who Emily really is. It's not just about the money or the company, it's about showing them what she's capable of. You need to make them see the truth." He slid the folder across the table, and I opened it. Inside was a set of documents, more evidence of Emily's behind-the-scenes dealings. The contracts she had been signing with the private equity firm, the emails she had been sending to potential buyers, all of it. But there was something else, something I hadn't seen before. Greg pointed to one of the documents. "Look at this. It's a letter from a competitor, someone Emily had been in talks with. The buyer she's dealing with isn't the only one interested in the company. This letter shows that Emily has been secretly working with other firms, trying to leverage the company's assets. She's playing everyone." I studied the letter closely. It was from a rival company, a competitor that had been eyeing our market for years. They had offered a higher price than the private equity firm, and the letter was filled with promises of future collaborations and growth. Emily had been hedging her bets, playing both sides to make sure she walked away with a huge payout. I slammed the folder shut. She's not just trying to sell the company. She's playing a game of chess, moving pieces around to maximize her gain. She doesn't care about the company or about me. She just wants power. Greg leaned back in his chair, watching me carefully. "You need to show this to the board. You can't hold anything back. The moment you show them how deep this goes, they'll have no choice but to see her for what she really is." I nodded, but I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Emily had already planted seeds of doubt in the board's minds. She had played the part of the dutiful, caring stepdaughter, the one who was just looking out for me. Exposing her now would be risky, it could backfire if I wasn't careful. The next morning, I stood in front of the boardroom doors, my heart pounding in my chest. The meeting was set to begin in an hour, and I had no idea how this would play out. I had everything ready: proof of Emily's betrayal, her manipulations, the deals she had been making behind my back. But would the board believe me? Or would they side with Emily, the golden child who had been making all the right moves? I took a deep breath and walked into the boardroom. The room was filled with familiar faces, longtime employees, trusted advisors, and the board members who had been with me since the company's inception. Emily was already sitting at the head of the table, her posture rigid and confident. She was wearing a suit that screamed authority, and as soon as she saw me, she gave me a tight, almost smug smile. "Good morning, Dad," she said, her voice sweet but laced with an undercurrent of something darker. "I'm glad you could join us today." I didn't respond, instead taking my seat at the opposite end of the table. The tension in the room was palpable. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for me to speak, to make my move. But I wasn't going to make it easy for Emily. I had the power now, not her. The meeting began with the usual pleasantries, but it didn't take long for Emily to take control. She started talking about the company's future, outlining plans to sell and restructure the business for the benefit of everyone involved. She spoke confidently, outlining the deal with the private equity firm and the benefits of a quick sale. As she spoke, I could see the board members nodding along, clearly impressed by her vision. I couldn't let her keep talking. I stood up abruptly, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Hold on a second," I said, my voice firm. "I don't think we're all seeing the full picture here." The room fell silent, everyone turning their attention to me. Emily's eyes narrowed, and I could see the tension in her shoulders as she tried to keep her composure. "I've been looking through the records," I continued, "and what I've found is disturbing. Emily has been in talks with a private equity firm for months, and not only that, but she's been negotiating behind my back with other buyers, playing one off the other. She's been planning to sell the company in stages, gutting it for parts. She's been making deals that benefit no one but herself." I slammed the folder onto the table, the documents spilling out for everyone to see. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each board member. This isn't about helping me. This is about Emily taking control and cashing out. She's been lying to all of you, making it seem like she's the savior of this company. But in reality, she's the one who's trying to destroy it. Emily's face went pale, and for the first time, I saw her mask slip. She looked around the room, her eyes darting between the board members, trying to gauge their reactions. But it was too late. The damage had been done. I had shown them the truth. Now it was up to them to decide what to do with it. The silence in the boardroom was deafening. My heart raced as I watched the faces of the board members, their eyes flicking back and forth between the documents I had just laid out on the table and Emily's increasingly tense expression. For a moment, no one spoke. I could feel Emily's gaze burning into me, but I didn't look away. I wasn't going to back down now. Not after everything she had done. I could hear the sound of my own breathing, a steady rhythm that seemed to echo louder than the silence. The tension in the room was thick, like a heavy fog that you couldn't push through. Then, finally, one of the board members, Mark Ellis, a longtime friend of mine and someone I had worked with for decades, cleared his throat. "David," Mark said, his voice calm but firm. "I understand you're upset, but these accusations are serious. We need to hear more details before we can make any decisions." Emily immediately jumped in, her voice sharp and defensive. "This is ridiculous. You're all being manipulated. This is a smear campaign. I've been working in the best interest of the company, and now David is trying to turn everyone against me." Her eyes darted around the room, looking for support, but the board members remained silent, their expressions unreadable. I could see the wheels turning in their minds, the realization starting to set in that Emily's plan wasn't as flawless as she had thought. But Emily wasn't done. She sat up straighter, trying to project confidence. "David, you've lost touch with the business. You've been distracted, and the company has been losing value because of it. I was just trying to help. I was trying to secure a future for all of us. For you." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, but she quickly recovered, forcing a smile. "I've worked so hard on this, and you can't just throw it all away because of a few misunderstandings." Her words were smooth, rehearsed even. But I could hear the desperation beneath her calm exterior. She was scared. She knew the walls were closing in. I took a deep breath and looked around the room, making sure everyone was paying attention. "I didn't throw anything away, Emily," I said, my voice steady but full of conviction. "I built this company from the ground up, and I won't let you destroy it just to line your pockets. What I'm showing you is the truth. These deals, these negotiations, everything you've been doing behind my back, this is about power, not about saving the company. You've been using your position to manipulate us all. I turned to Mark Ellis, who had been silent up until now. Mark, you've known me for years. You know I would never sell this company without good reason. Do you really think I'd let this happen? Do you really think I'd let her take everything I've built? Mark hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the documents on the table. I don't know, David, he said, his voice low. But if what you're saying is true, then this changes everything. Emily, I need you to explain this. Emily's expression darkened. Mark, I can't believe you're buying into this. David's been out of touch for months, and now he's using these lies to discredit me. I've been working tirelessly to ensure that this company doesn't crumble. You all saw the numbers. You saw the projections. I've done nothing but try to protect all of us, and now David is trying to ruin everything. Her voice was rising, becoming more frantic, and I could see the cracks in her carefully constructed facade. The others were starting to listen, their doubts about her growing with each passing second. I could tell they were beginning to question whether her motives were as pure as she had led them to believe. That's enough, Emily, I said, cutting her off. You've had your say. Now it's time for the truth to come out. The board needs to see everything, not just what you want them to see. I've been going through the company's finances, the records. The figures you showed them were cherry-picked, designed to make the sale look like the only option. But what you didn't show them were the long-term projections, the real numbers. You've been manipulating the data to make it seem like selling is the only option, when in reality, the company is doing just fine. I could feel the eyes of the board members on me as I pulled out another set of documents, this time showing the financial health of the company over the past few years. I laid them out carefully, piece by piece, making sure everyone saw the full picture. The company isn't in financial trouble, I continued, my voice growing stronger with every word. We've had our challenges, like any business, but we're still profitable. We've been making strategic investments, and there are several projects in the pipeline that will secure our future. Emily is trying to convince you that selling is the only way out, but that's not true. She's trying to sell us off for her own benefit. Emily's face was turning red now, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to find the right words. But the more I exposed her, the harder it became for her to speak. She was losing control, and I could see her frustration mounting. You're making a mistake, Dad, Emily said through clenched teeth. You've always been stubborn, but you're not thinking clearly. This company is worth more to me than it is to you. I'm the one who has been working behind the scenes to keep it afloat. You've been stuck in the past, clinging to outdated methods. It's time to move on. I'm not moving on, Emily, I said coldly, my voice unwavering. I'm not letting you destroy what I've worked my entire life for. And you're not going to sell my company out from under me. This company isn't yours to take. It's mine. The board members were starting to murmur among themselves, their voices rising in volume as they discussed what they had just heard. I could feel the tide turning, slowly but surely. They weren't buying Emily's story anymore. They were beginning to see her for who she really was, someone who wanted to take control for her own gain, someone who didn't care about the company, only about what it could give her. And then, as the conversation heated up, I saw it. A look on Mark Ellis's face that made my stomach drop. He was leaning forward, his brow furrowed, his eyes fixed on Emily. Emily, he said slowly, his voice steady. There's something we haven't talked about yet. The emails. The deals with the buyers. The letters you've been sending. Why didn't you tell us about any of this? Emily's face paled, and for the first time, she seemed truly cornered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. The truth had finally caught up with her. The board was turning. They had all seen the evidence. They were starting to question Emily's intentions. They had to make a decision, and it was clear now that the battle for control was far from over. The room was quiet now. A few of the board members were still murmuring among themselves, exchanging thoughts in hushed tones, while others sat back in their chairs, deep in contemplation. Emily, once so confident, had gone completely still. Her hands, once calmly folded on the table, were now clenched into fists, her knuckles white with tension. She was trying to recover, but the damage was already done. The facade of the dutiful daughter, always concerned for the family, always in control, had shattered. I could see the wheels turning in the minds of the board members. They were divided, torn between the loyalty they had for me, a founder they had worked with for years, and the image Emily had cultivated as the future of the company. But one thing was clear: the narrative Emily had spun, of a loyal, caring daughter merely trying to protect her father and the business, no longer held water. I stood at the head of the table, letting the silence stretch out. This was my moment to cement the truth. Emily had underestimated me. She thought I was old and disconnected, that I wouldn't notice the moves she was making behind the scenes. She thought the company would be mine no longer, that I'd be an easy target for her to take advantage of. She thought I was weak. But I wasn't. "Emily," I said quietly, my voice carrying through the room, "this isn't about what's best for the company, is it? This isn't about saving anyone. This is about you taking what's mine, what's our family's. The company isn't just a business to me. It's my life, my history, my legacy. And you thought you could just take it from me without a second thought." She didn't respond, her gaze fixed firmly on the table in front of her. Her lips were pressed together tightly, and her jaw was clenched so hard I could see the muscle twitching beneath her skin. She was breaking, and she knew it. The calm exterior was slipping, and for the first time since this whole ordeal had begun, I could see real fear in her eyes. "Do you think I didn't notice the little things?" I continued. "The meetings you took without telling me? The financial projections you manipulated? The buyers you spoke to behind my back? Do you really think I wouldn't find out?" "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she finally said, her voice low, almost pleading. "I thought I was doing the right thing. You've been too distracted. The company has been losing money. You've been making decisions that didn't make sense. I was only trying to protect you. To protect all of us." Her words were slick, but I could hear the cracks in them now. She was reaching, grasping for some shred of justification, but it was too late. The truth was out. "Protect us?" I echoed, shaking my head. "No, Emily. You weren't protecting us. You were looking out for yourself. You were lining your pockets, making deals behind our backs, and you thought you could get away with it. You thought I wouldn't notice." A few board members exchanged uncomfortable glances, and Mark Ellis spoke up again, his voice carefully measured. "David's right. Emily, you've been out of line. This isn't the way we do business here." "Mark, you don't understand," Emily snapped, her voice rising again, her composure slipping further with each passing moment. "I do understand. I've been running the company's day-to-day operations. I've been the one keeping things afloat while David has been distracted. I've been trying to save us from disaster. And now he's trying to turn you all against me? Why can't you see that I was doing this for all of us?" She was spinning the same tired argument, trying to play the martyr, but the board wasn't buying it anymore. They were seeing her for what she truly was: manipulative, power-hungry, and willing to throw anyone under the bus to get what she wanted. "You're wrong," I said, my voice firm, cutting through the noise. "You weren't saving the company. You were setting us up to sell out for your own gain. And I won't let you destroy everything I've worked for. Not now, not ever." Emily shot me a glare, her eyes flashing with anger. "You'll regret this, Dad," she hissed through gritted teeth. "You don't understand what's at stake. You never did." I shook my head slowly, disappointment flooding through me. "No, Emily. You're the one who doesn't understand. You think this is all about money and power. But this company is more than that. It's a family business. My family's legacy. And if you think I'll let you tear it apart for your own gain, you've got another thing coming." The board was silent for a moment. Then, slowly, one by one, they began to speak up, their voices quiet but resolute. "I've been with this company for years," said Sarah, one of the board members who had been with me since the beginning. "I've watched it grow, and I've watched you, David. I don't think you're wrong about what's been going on. I think we need to reconsider our options." "I agree," added Michael, another senior board member. "This isn't about saving the company. This is about preserving what you've built, David. And Emily. I'm not sure she has our best interests at heart." The room was beginning to shift, and I could see Emily's confidence starting to crumble. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for support, but the board was moving away from her. One by one, they were distancing themselves from her, and I knew it was over. Emily had lost control. Her eyes finally met mine, and I could see the venom in them. "You'll regret this, David," she said again, her voice trembling with rage. "You'll lose everything. You think you've won, but you haven't. You're just too old to see it." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The truth had already been laid bare. The board knew what needed to be done. "David," Mark said, his voice calm but resolute, "we're going to have to revisit the terms of the company's future. I think it's clear that Emily's plan isn't in the best interest of the business. We need to start over and reconsider our options." I nodded, the weight of the decision settling in. This wasn't just about Emily. It was about preserving the integrity of the company, ensuring that it continued to thrive. And now, I had the chance to ensure that it would. The company would stay in the family, under my control, where it belonged. Emily stood up suddenly, her chair scraping against the floor. "You'll regret this," she said again, her voice trembling with fury. "I won't let this go. You haven't heard the last of me." I watched as she stormed out of the room, her heels clicking loudly on the hardwood floor, a sharp contrast to the stillness that followed. The board members exchanged looks, and I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on us all. The battle wasn't over yet. Emily wasn't going to go down without a fight. But for the first time in what felt like months, I felt like I had a fighting chance. I had fought for my company, and now, it seemed like the tides were turning in my favor. The door slammed behind Emily with a force that echoed through the boardroom, leaving a tense silence in its wake. The board members exchanged uneasy glances, still processing the gravity of what had just transpired. For a moment, I could only hear the pounding of my own heart. I'd done it. I had exposed Emily for what she was, a power-hungry, manipulative woman who would do anything to take control of what I had spent my life building. But I knew that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stood there for a moment, gathering myself. The board had taken my side, but there was still much to be done. Emily wouldn't go quietly. I knew her well enough to know that. She had always been the type to fight tooth and nail for what she wanted. She wasn't going to just walk away, especially after everything she had put into her plan. "David, I think we all need a moment to process," Mark Ellis said, his voice soft but deliberate. "But I don't think there's any question about what comes next. We need to protect the company. We need to make sure Emily's actions don't jeopardize everything." I nodded, my eyes scanning the room. The board members were all present, their expressions a mixture of concern and disbelief. They had witnessed Emily's attempt to seize control, and now they knew what I had known all along, that her motivations had never been about the company. She had been willing to destroy everything for her own gain. "We'll start by putting a freeze on the negotiations with the private equity firm," I said, my voice steady. "The sale is off the table. Emily has lost the trust of the board, and we need to regain control. This company will not be sold. Not now, not ever." The room seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. It was clear that the majority of the board had been hesitant about the sale all along. They had been looking for an excuse to put a stop to it, and now they had one. But the question remained, what would happen to Emily? She had already made her move, and she wasn't going to take this loss lying down. "We'll need to take action quickly," Mark said. "If she has allies in the company, we need to address that too. She can't be allowed to continue operating under the radar. We need a full review of her role in the company and her actions over the past few months." I nodded. "I agree. I'm going to make it clear to the rest of the team that what Emily has done is unacceptable. She's been manipulating the system, using her position to line her own pockets. She's not welcome in this company anymore." The board members nodded in agreement, their faces hardening with resolve. We all knew what needed to be done, but none of us could shake the feeling that we were standing on the edge of something far more dangerous. Emily wasn't just angry. She was vengeful, and I had no doubt that she would do whatever it took to get what she wanted. As the meeting adjourned, I walked out of the boardroom, my mind swirling with plans for the future. The company was safe for now, but Emily wasn't the type to back down easily. I needed to prepare for the worst. I couldn't let my guard down, not when everything I had worked for was on the line. The next few days were a whirlwind of phone calls, meetings, and frantic decision-making. I spent hours speaking with lawyers, drafting new contracts, and reinforcing the company's financial structures to ensure that Emily's attempt to sell had no lasting effects. The board rallied behind me, and together, we began to undo the damage she had caused. But there was one thing I couldn't shake. Emily was still out there, and I knew she wasn't going to let this go. She had already proven that she wasn't afraid to play dirty, and I had no doubt that she would try to take me down in any way she could. I had to stay one step ahead. The phone call came late one evening, as I was sitting at my desk, going over the company's accounts for the third time that day. I recognized the number immediately. It was Emily. "David," her voice crackled through the speaker, cold and bitter. "I hope you're happy with yourself. You've made your choice. You've sided with the board, and you've chosen to destroy everything I've worked for." I didn't respond immediately, letting her words hang in the air. I had heard all of this before. I knew where this conversation was headed. "You think you've won," she continued, her voice trembling with rage. "But you haven't. You've only delayed the inevitable. I've worked too hard, and I've been too patient. You can't stop me, Dad. I'll find a way. I always do." Her words were laced with venom, but I could hear the uncertainty beneath the anger. Emily had always been a master manipulator, but for the first time, I sensed a crack in her armor. She wasn't as confident as she had been in the boardroom. She was scared. And when people like Emily get scared, they become unpredictable. "I don't want to fight you, Emily," I said, my voice steady. "I never wanted this to come to this. But you've left me no choice. You can't have the company. It's mine, and it always will be." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, with a final, biting laugh, Emily spoke again. "You think this is over, don't you? You're wrong. You'll see. You'll regret crossing me. You'll regret everything." And then the line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone in my hand. For a moment, I felt a sense of dread settle in my chest. Emily wasn't finished. She hadn't given up, not by a long shot. But I wasn't going to let her tear apart the company I had built. I couldn't. The next day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Emily's lawyer, and it contained a demand that I wasn't prepared for. She was filing for legal action, claiming that she had been wrongfully excluded from the board and that the decisions made about the company were invalid without her involvement. It was a bold move, and it sent a chill down my spine. The letter made it clear, Emily wasn't just angry. She was preparing for a full-blown legal battle. I sat at my desk, the letter in front of me, my mind racing. I knew this was coming. Emily wouldn't go quietly. But I wasn't going to let her take the company through the courts. Not after everything I had worked for. I would fight her every step of the way. I dialed Greg's number, my heart pounding. "We need to prepare for a legal war," I said. "This isn't over. Emily is coming for everything." Greg's voice was calm but firm. "David, we knew this could happen. We'll fight her in court. We have the evidence, and we'll use it. You're not alone in this." And with that, the final battle for control of the company began. Emily wasn't going to stop until she had everything. But I wasn't about to let her destroy what I had spent my entire life building. The fight for my company, my legacy, had only just begun. The days leading up to the court date felt like a blur. The constant stream of legal correspondence, the frantic preparations, the endless strategy sessions with Greg, my lawyer, and the sleepless nights spent trying to anticipate Emily's next move, it all became a constant, unrelenting rhythm. Every moment was consumed by the impending legal showdown. But I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't going to back down. I couldn't. Emily had pushed me into this corner. She had crossed every line, undermined every effort I had made to protect the company, and now, she was using the legal system to try to take it all from me. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. She had threatened my legacy, my family's future, and I was going to fight for it with everything I had. The courtroom was large, cold, and impersonal, the polished floors reflecting the harsh fluorescent lights above. I sat in the front row, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on my shoulders. The court had convened, and all the players were there: myself, Emily and her lawyer, Greg, and a handful of witnesses who had been called to testify. The tension in the room was palpable. This was the moment of reckoning. Emily was sitting across from me, her posture rigid and her expression carefully controlled. She had traded in her usual business attire for something more formal, something designed to convey authority. Her lawyer was by her side, a sharp, no-nonsense woman with a reputation for winning cases, no matter the cost. Emily looked calm, but I knew her well enough to see the tightness in her jaw, the flicker of something dark in her eyes. She wasn't going to let this go without a fight. She wasn't going to let me win. The judge, an older man with a weathered face and a reputation for being fair but firm, called the court to order. His gavel struck the bench, and the room fell into absolute silence. "We are here today to resolve the dispute between David Green and his stepdaughter, Emily Green, regarding the control of the family business, the company David Green founded," the judge began. "Both parties have presented their claims. It is now up to this court to determine the outcome." I felt a cold sweat running down my back as I heard those words. This wasn't just a business dispute, it was about my identity, my family, my entire life's work. Everything I had fought for was on the line. And Emily, she wasn't going to make this easy. Emily's lawyer stood up first. "Your Honor, my client, Emily Green, has been an integral part of the company for years. She has contributed significantly to its operations, and in recent months, she took proactive steps to ensure the company's future. She recognized the financial troubles that the company was facing and acted in the best interest of everyone involved, including David Green, who has, unfortunately, been unable to keep up with the demands of running such a large business. The sale of the company was a necessary step, and my client was merely doing what was needed to protect the business from further decline." Her words were smooth, practiced, and utterly devoid of truth. Emily hadn't been protecting anyone but herself. She had been planning to sell off the company for her own financial gain, and she had been willing to destroy everything I had worked for to do it. Greg stood up next, his voice calm and measured. "Your Honor, while Emily Green claims to have been acting in the best interest of the company, the evidence before you tells a different story. Emily has been negotiating behind David Green's back with multiple parties, actively trying to sell the company without his consent. She has manipulated financial data, misrepresented the company's performance, and attempted to manipulate board members for her own gain. This was not an attempt to save the company. This was an effort to steal it. The weight of Greg's words landed in the room like a bombshell. I could see Emily's face falter for a brief moment, her expression flickering with surprise before she quickly masked it. Her lawyer immediately rose to her feet. "Objection, Your Honor," Emily's lawyer said sharply. "These are baseless accusations with no concrete evidence. Mr. Green has no proof that my client ever intended to sell the company without his consent." Greg didn't flinch. "Your Honor, we have email records, financial documents, and testimony from key witnesses who will testify to the fact that Emily Green was negotiating with multiple parties to sell the company without her father's knowledge or approval. This was not a matter of protecting the company, it was a matter of self-interest and greed." The judge looked at both of us, his expression unreadable. "The court will allow the evidence to be presented. We will now hear from the witnesses." One by one, the witnesses took the stand. The first was Sarah, a senior member of the board who had been with the company for years. She testified to the fact that Emily had been working behind the scenes to push through a sale and had been manipulating financial projections to make it look like selling was the only viable option. Her testimony was damning, and I could see Emily's lawyer struggle to maintain her composure as Sarah detailed the lengths Emily had gone to secure the deal. Next, Mark Ellis, my longtime business partner, took the stand. He confirmed everything we had said. He told the court how Emily had slowly taken over key decisions, bypassing David Green's authority and working with outside firms to position herself as the company's future leader. The words coming from Mark's mouth felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Finally, the truth was coming to light. The defense tried to discredit both Sarah and Mark, but their testimonies were too strong. The facts were too clear. Emily had been plotting against me for months, and now the court knew the full extent of it. But the final blow came when Greg introduced the most crucial piece of evidence, the financial statements that Emily had tried to hide. They showed not only the manipulation of key data but also her involvement in meetings with potential buyers, including one deal that had been finalized without my approval. It was as if the last puzzle piece had clicked into place. Emily's lawyer knew it too. She stood up and tried to make one final argument, but her words were hollow, her tone shaky. The evidence was overwhelming. Emily's greed had clouded her judgment, and now it was all coming to an end. The judge called for a brief recess, and I sat there, my hands clenched in my lap, waiting. I could feel the tension in the air as the final decision loomed. This wasn't just about winning a legal battle, it was about reclaiming my company, my legacy, and my dignity. When the court reconvened, the judge addressed the room. After reviewing the evidence presented, it is clear that the actions of Emily Green were not in the best interest of the company. The court finds in favor of David Green. Emily Green's actions have been deemed inappropriate, and any agreements made regarding the sale of the company are invalid. The weight of those words hit me like a tidal wave. The battle was over. Emily had lost. I glanced at her across the room. She was sitting there, her face pale, her eyes wide with shock. For the first time, I saw her vulnerable. But that vulnerability wasn't enough to change the course of this battle. It was too late. David Green, the judge continued, you will retain full control of the company, and the board is to resume their operations under your direction. Emily Green's involvement in the company is hereby revoked. The court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a final thud, and the room was filled with a rush of quiet conversations. I felt the weight of relief, but it was tempered with something else, something bittersweet. I had won, yes, but the victory came at a cost. Emily was my stepdaughter, and in the end, I had lost her. That was the hardest part of it all. As I stood up, I met her eyes one last time. She was no longer the confident, manipulative figure who had once tried to take everything from me. She was just a broken woman, defeated by her own ambition. I'll never forgive you for what you did, I said softly, my voice steady but filled with regret. But I'll never forget the lessons this taught me. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. I had one. My legacy was safe. And as I walked out of the courtroom, I knew that this battle, for all its pain and heartbreak, had been worth it. The company, my life's work, had been preserved. But more than that, I had learned the true cost of ambition, and how far I was willing to go to protect everything I had built. Author's note. The battle for family, legacy, and power is one that can tear even the closest bonds apart. In this story, David Green fought not only for his company but for his very identity. Emily's ambition led her to manipulate and deceive, but in the end, the truth and loyalty triumphed. The court's decision was a victory for justice, but it was also a painful reminder that sometimes, the cost of protecting what matters most is the loss of what we hold dear.